Hey, Bob Woodfin here. I just wanted to follow up from my workshop that I had on Saturday. Someone had asked a question about how to change colors in Photoshop, and I fumbled around with it, didn't really give you a good answer, so I wanted to follow up and show you exactly how that works. There's a couple of ways I tried to show you the hue saturation, how to change that, colors using that, and I tried to show you with the curves. There's a better way than both of those, I believe, that I'm going to show you that. But I'm going to show you hue saturation first because it does work whenever you don't want to use or to create a selection. However, a lot of times nowadays, especially with the ease that we have of creating selections, I believe there's a better way. So to get started, we're going to go ahead and start this fire hydrant here. This is not exactly the same picture we had Saturday, but it's close. It's the same fire hydrant, just a different image. And we're going to change this blue to kind of a gold color. That was the request. So I'm going to come down here and select a hue saturation adjustment layer. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to do the directed selection here and select blue. And then the next thing we're going to do is come over here and we're going to squeeze everything together. This is the part I was leaving out. There's a few parts I was leaving out, but this was one of the primary ones that I was leaving out. So we're going to come in here, and then I'm going to take this eyedropper and I'm going to come in and select exactly the same thing. And I'm going to take the saturation down. The reason I'm taking saturation down is just to show us what's being selected. You can see here the part that's being that is desaturated is what we have selected so far. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull these apart until that blue becomes more desaturated. See right there, now it's very desaturated around the edges all around here. So that basically tells you that I have that selected. Now if I take this and go back to 0 with it, the blue comes back. Now we can come in here and I can move this back and forth, and it's only selecting the area that was blue. Now part of the problem I had with this was actually finding a golden color. We wanted to change it to a golden color. So now what we're going to do is we kind of have a yellowish gold here. What I'm going to do is try to get rid of these green tones in here. So I'm going to take these and spread them back out and try to open up the area that was blue. And there we go right there. So now that green is pretty much gone, and we've created and made this more of a gold color. So now what I'm going to do is you can play around now with the saturation and the lightness to try to make it more of the golden color that you want. So we can add more saturation, makes it a little bit more gold, and if that is too yellow, you can come back up to the hue and move it just a tiny bit one way or the other to try to get it more gold, maybe something like that. You can also put your cursor up here and nudge with the arrow keys as well. But this pretty much has what we were looking for. Now what we also have though is this area in here that is turned gold. Now that is one of two things. You can look at it in one of two ways. That is the reflection from the gold color that you have here that originally was blue, and that's the way you want it. Or you can say, no, that's just a shadow, and that shadow should be somewhat blue. So what you could do, if you be kind of in the middle here, what I might do is come in here with a black brush and I've got my flow on 20%, and what I may do is come in here and just kind of paint part of that away, so part of that blue does come back, so that you have it something like that. And now you have a much more subtle, if you wanted to consider that as being a reflection of the gold, you now have a much more subtle reflection in there. So that is a way to change this to kind of a goldish color. And if you don't like that, you can always go in and play around with the color, and that was, let's see, let me just, we'll need to go back to, it was one of these, and I'm not sure which one it selected. I wasn't really paying attention. I think it selected the blues. Yeah, so we had the blues selected. So you could come back in here, and of course it did because it was blue originally. I should have known that. Then you can play around with this a little bit more to change the hue or change the saturation or the lightness. I didn't even bother with the lightness, but you can make it darker or lighter depending on what you're actually wanting to do with it to try to get whatever color you want. Now the problem with this is that you can't dial in an exact RGB value that you want to use for this. And that's where we come up with the next situation. And what I think is excuse me, sorry about that. What I think is a better way to do this, now that we have the object selection tool and other selection capabilities, that we can select this blue and do a much easier change and make it more of a targeted if we wanted to target a color. So what I would do instead of this is I would come in with my object selection tool and come in here and see if it's going to select this blue here, and it selects it pretty good except for down here. So I'm going to hit my Option or Alt key to see if I can subtract it down here. See if that works, and that works pretty good. So now I'm going to come in, I'm going to press on my Shift key and select this. Pretty good. Same thing over here. And then the same thing right here. So in just a few minutes I've selected it pretty good. Now you can see in this last one, let me turn off my object select. You can see that it actually selected a little too much, but I'm not going to worry about that at the moment. I'll come back and get that in a minute. So now that I have done that, what I can do is do a, sorry, somebody's driving by that's with a loud muffler. I'm going to select solid color adjustment, and it's going to bring up the color picker. Now I've already selected a gold, but you can select a different tint of gold, whatever you want. It's going to dynamically change it to whatever you select. We'll select this one and then come over here to this blend mode and change it to color. And when you do that, it's going to just change the color. It's going to keep all the texture and keep all the little curves and little nooks and crannies and everything. So with this, if this isn't the color you want, you just double click on this again and move it around until you find the exact color you want. And it changes dynamically as you do it, so you don't have to be guessing. But the good thing is if you had the RGB values, you could dial them in here exact. And we'll do that in just a minute in another example. But I like this a lot because it's so easy. I did that very, very much easier than playing around with those sliders in the hue saturation adjustment layer. So there is one little issue that I need to show you. I'm going to move this one out of the way. This is the hue saturation, leave it turned off. There's one more thing I needed to tell you about this, and it's really kind of minor unless you do it and you're kind of frustrated. I ran into this accidentally, and that is if I wanted to do something to this layer with an adjustment layer. For example, if I wanted to do a curves adjustment to just the items that I had selected here and the color associated with them, if I wanted to do a curves adjustment on that, and I created a curves adjustment and then clip this to it, because you don't want to affect the back, you just want to affect this. So that's why I'm clipping it. So if I did that and then I tried to lighten it up, for example, it doesn't really lighten it up, it actually changes the color. And the reason it's doing that, reset, the reason it's doing that is because it's affecting just this layer, and this layer is a blend of this adjustment, this color, with this layer here. If you're clipped to just this layer, it doesn't do as you would expect. I'll say it that way. So what you need to do really is combine these two together to make a single layer of both of them together, and then apply your curves to it. So let's do that. first I want to make sure that I don't lose this selection. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to press Option and I'm going to copy it up here to this mask so that it maintains the selection of these gold items. So then what I can do is take this, I don't want to lose my base layer. I always try to keep my base layer. So I'm going to make a copy of it. And if you do Command J is the shortcut to make a copy. And I want to take this and I want to rasterize it so it's not a smart object, so I can merge these two together easily. It doesn't really matter actually, but then I want to make sure I unclip this. I forgot to do that, so we're going to unclip that. Now I can take these two and I can merge them together, which shortcut is Command E. That merges them together. So now if I take this, and I don't really have to clip it because I've got it masked here. But if I take this and I push this up, it's going to do what you would expect. It's going to lighten and darken. So it would be the same no matter what adjustment layer I was using, whether I was using that or if I was using a color balance or if I was using a pattern on it or a channel mix or black and white, whatever it is, that would be the case. So I just want to point that out because I tried to do that the other day and it took me by surprise, and I had to kind of think about it before I understood what it was. So let's take another one. We're going to take this one first. Here's a picture of a couple that we took a picture of whenever we were at the Cultural Center on my safari. And what I want to do is I'm going to take this blue hat and this blue skirt, and we're going to change them to a gold color. Excuse me. So we're going to do it with a Hue and Saturation first. So we'll go to Hue Saturation, and I take the Targeted Adjustment tool, and I come over here and I'm going to select this blue. Then we're going to do, like I said, we're going to take these and we're going to mash them together. Now in this case, notice that this linear color wheel has them at each end. So in order to push them together, I have to do them this way. And then I'm going to push this over here. And then I'm going to push this over here. And that pushes them all together. Okay? So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this eyedropper and we're going to select the same area. And then I'm going to come over here and we're going to push this saturation down to 0. And you can see that it didn't get everything. It just got that little bit of area and some of it down here in her skirt. So what I need to do is start spreading these out again. So I'm going to spread this out until that goes completely gray. There we go. So now it's completely gray, both of these, which means that it shows that it's desaturated area shows the area that's completely gray. Now there's also some blue that's on her shoulder here that's turned gray. You can notice that this blue on his shoulder is turned gray. So there's some areas that we probably are going to have to go back and mask out. But now what we can do is take this back to 0, so that's going to turn back to blue. And then we can now take this hue slider and push it until we get something close to gold. So we're in here something like this. It's kind of an orangey yellow. And we can play around with saturation a little bit to try to make it a little bit more gold. So that's the reason that I think the other one is so much easier, is because you kind of have to play around with it a little bit here. Maybe a little bit more saturated, a little darker. So you just have to try to get the colors a little bit more orange. There we go. That's kind of a goldish color there. So that's where I'm going to stop with this one. But you'll notice that if I turn it on and off, notice her body there. This little shade here turned a little bit of gold up here on his shoulder and over here on her shoulder. Also, if I flip it on and off, you'll notice that blue goes to gold. You may or may not want that. If you don't want it, all you have to do is get on your paint on it with black. So go to your black brush and just paint over it like that. And his shoulder here, turn that, because there was a blue light over her head, so that would have an effect. So anyway, and then up here, I think up here, we had, yeah, there we go. Okay, so that is using the hue and saturation adjustment. So now let's go with the other one, which is the one I really prefer. We're going to come in here, and especially since, I mean, it's so much easier since we got this object selection tool. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to say, let's select this hat. See how it does. It does a really good job of making that selection. So if you want to add to the selection, you press Shift, and now we're going to come in here. And by the way, this purple is where it's telling me that it's if I just tap on it, it's going to select all of that. So if I come over here and I tap, it's going to select all of him. If I come up here, nah, it's nothing. But anyway, that's what that is. It's a little distracting, and I kind of like it here and there, but it's a little distracting. So this did a pretty good job down here. The only thing is that this yellow down here, there's some blue below it. So if I zoom in, I think you can see that. There's a little bit of blue underneath that design there. So I'm going to go with an Option or Alt key, and I'm going to try to subtract that little bit right there and see what happens. Oops, didn't quite get it good, so let's try reselecting this. And it did a better job when I initially did it, so let's see how that works. There we go. So that's better. That's got a pretty good selection there. So now what we're going to do, and that just took a couple of extra strokes there with no big deal. And now we just come in here and I do a solid color adjustment. It's already got a gold selected because it always comes back with the last one you selected. So it's already got gold in here, so I can just say OK. And now we have that, and if I change it to color, now we have a goal selected for that. So that to me is just so easy that's what I'd rather do. It doesn't affect anything else because those are the items that you selected. Now there's another thing you can do here, which is what I alluded to earlier. I'm going to turn this off. We're going to do it over again, and I'm going to use the same. Well, we'll just do it here. Probably easier to just do it with this. So I'm going to open this again. Well, before I do that, I want to do a selection, which if you use your color sampler tool or any other way that is easy for you, but if you do that and you'll open your info panel, when you click, it's going to give you the RGB value. So I want to match that with whatever this value is. So 192, 163, and 85. So now this can stay open. I can double click this and come in here and change my RGB values to 192 and 163 and 85. And that's a little bit different than the other color. And now I've got her colors on her hat and her skirt are the exact same colors that we had over here. So I matched it to another color in the image, and that's so much easier than working with the curves adjustment that I was trying to show you the other day. So to me, these are the ways to change color of anything in Photoshop. I would prefer to do this latter method unless it's just such a intricate kind of selection that you can't do it. I would do it this way. If you can't get the selection, then I would try the hue saturation and doing it the way that I showed you. I'm going to do one last image. And I want to do this because it's not that easy to change colors or change black and white to a color. So what I wanted to do is, I chose this one because you've got almost pure white here. If I select this, you're going to see that it's, or pure neutral color I should say, I keep thinking white. 213, 215, 219, so it's a little bit blue. But if you tried to do it with, or make the change with the hue and saturation, it really doesn't do anything. So let me show you that. Let's try the hue saturation, and let's Open that up. And the first thing we're going to do is do a targeted selection. We're going to come right here. And then we're going to squeeze these in together. By the way, I learned this technique from Bill Willmore. Great guy, wonderful Photoshop teacher, Lightroom teacher, great guy online, and I've learned so much from him. So now we're going to come in here, we're going to select this, click that, take it down here to desaturated. We're going to spread these out. And you're not seeing anything turn gray. I mean, you're really not. You're not seeing anything being selected. The only thing that you're going to be able to change is this shadow area over here, because it has more colors in it because of a reflection than the areas over here. So you can see that nothing really changed to gray. If I change this to 0, you can see that that changed a little bit. So whenever I move this around, the only places that it's going to change in the color is just a little bit of a tint over here. So I wanted to point this out because it's not, I mean, it's easy to actually make a change. We'll show you in just a second, but see how over here it's just doing a little bit of a tint, and then of course there's a reflection here in the window that's being changed. So you can't really make this gold. If I wanted to make this gold, it's only going to make the shadow just a little bit gold. So what we're going to do, we're going to say, okay, I can't do it with this. So what we're going to do is we're going to do it with the second method, the method I like, with the solid color adjustment. And we're going to come in here with a object selection, and we're just going to draw, sorry, I did it again. I did this when I was practicing. I chose the polygonal lasso tool instead. So the object selection tool, we're going to come in here and just go around the area that I want to change. And it's going to do a really good job. Now, you know, it always does better when you practice than when you don't practice. So, or when you're doing it live. So it didn't do a great job over here. So I'm going to come over here with my option, and I'm going to try to remove these areas. Or actually, I want to add these areas. So let me do this again. So I want to do a shift, and I want to add these areas. Let's see if it's going to add that. It added that, but it didn't add it at the bottom. So let me do it again. There we go. Now, I'm not, you know, you're not married to the selection tool, so I mean that tool, so I can change and go to the lasso tool if I want to, and do a shift to add, and just come in here and just add that. And these little things, it's kind of funny because I did it 2 or 3 times when I was practicing, and it always worked beautifully right here. But it's nice to know how to come in here and fix it if it doesn't work out. Okay, and I'm just doing it a lot faster than I would if I were doing it for real. So it has selected the house now. Let's see, I think I need to do these too. Yes. Okay, now I would be a lot more careful here. I think I got a little bitty area there, so close enough. You'll get the idea. So I need to subtract these windows, and I can do that. It did a real good job whenever I did the object selection. So I'm going to press my option key and come in here and say I want to subtract this object. And you don't really, you don't have to be real specific. And it did a great job there of removing the window. So we're going to do it again. Let's see if it's going to remove it. Okay. Okay, so those are removed. Now I've got this area over here. Now I'm going to use the polygonal lasso tool. And if you've never used it, basically I want to press the option to remove. You start with an anchor, and I just hit a dot there, and it creates an anchor. And then I click, and go down to the edges, and it's really good for straight lines. That's why I chose it. And then I don't care what I do here because it's not going to matter. So right there, so see, it just selected and removed that. So now basically I just have the house selected. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the same thing I did before. Solid color adjustment. I'm going to change it to something interesting here. We'll go to let's go to like this color. So I got that color, and then I just change it to color, and now I have a house with this color. And if you zoom in, we're going to zoom in, and look at that, you've got the texture and everything. Oh, we've got a water faucet here that probably shouldn't be there unless you wanted to paint it too. But you can see here, it keeps all of the texture and all the nooks and crannies and edges and everything, but changes the color. And that's what the color blend mode does. So I wanted to show you this because it's near impossible to change something that's a neutral color using hue saturation. At least I think it is. You may have been able to do it with, let's try. You may be able to do it with colorize. Let's try that. Didn't think about that. So, but then you have to have a selection anyway if you're going to do colorize. But we'll do it. Colorize is another option with hue saturation that I didn't mention. It's this little checkbox here, and what it does is it colorizes the entire image. And what you can do is come in here and just move this around and find the color you're looking for. So if we went for like a teal color here, it's a little harder to get. That's more of a blue-green. Here we go. Something like that. Then I can just copy this that I've already done up here like this, and I get the same kind of thing. So you can do it with the hue saturation, but you have to have a selection, because if you don't use colorize, then you're going to have to use a selection in order to select it. So anyway, those are the two ways that I think work the best for changing colors in an image. So hopefully that's helpful to you, and if you have any questions or any problems making this work, let me know, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Thanks a lot. I appreciate it, and I appreciate you guys coming to my workshop and asking all these questions. It helps me remember. I knew that I had done this before, but I had forgotten exactly how to do it, and that's why I was stumbling around. So I appreciate you asking the questions, and we'll see you next time.